Season's greetings, everybody. I'm Joshua Orro, the Mustang Prince, and welcome to Mustang Prince Orro Reports. Now, for this episode, I'm going to take you all back to one of my childhood favorite Christmas stories, and what better place to find it than in the realm of Dr. Seuss. Yes, friends, we're going to talk about the Grinch again. Now, if you may recall, over the course of my show, I got to talk about the Grinch several times, like when I blogged the 2018 Illumination movie, which was the last Dr. Seuss movie that his widow, Audrey Geisel, produced before she passed away. I also blogged Halloween is Grinch Night, and I briefly talked about the 1966 Chuck Jones special while I was blogging In Search of Dr. Seuss. Also, during the early 80s, the Grinch had a crossover with the beloved Dr. Seuss mascot, the Cat in the Hat. He had his own stage musical during the mid-2000s, and just recently, the Grinch got a sequel book called How the Grinch Lost Christmas. And in my opinion, after giving it a read, I thought it was a very touching story. Also to note, I kind of do have a personal connection with the Grinch, due to the fact that I got to play him in Seussical at Musical Theater Village a couple times. I made a cameo in Jaime Tude's Grinch review from 2020, and the Grinch was the central character of the very first choir show I got to participate in during my elementary age, which was called The Grinch Who Stole the Season back in December 2000. Also to note, during that very same time, we received a live-action adaptation of Dr. Seuss's beloved and professional favorite story, and that's the subject of my blog today. So, released on November 17th, 2000, the movie is How the Grinch Stole Christmas. And now, on for the plot of the movie. Inside a snowflake exists the magical village of Whoville, the home of the cheery Whos who all love the festive Christmas holidays. Just outside of their beloved town, in a cave on Mount Crumpet, lives the Grinch, a grouchy creature who hates Christmas. During the day of the 1000th Whobilation celebration, little Cindy Lou Who, who believes that there is some good in him, decides to invite the Grinch while attempting to transcend the festivities' empty commercialism. After getting humiliated and going on a public rampage, the Grinch devises a plot to ruin Christmas by dressing up as Santa Claus and taking everybody's presents, food, and decorations. But before he gets his chance to dump them over the mountain's summit, the Grinch, along with the other Whos, realize that Christmas means more than just gifts. So, what do I personally think of this movie? Well, as much as I love the Chuck Jones and Illumination versions, I consider this as one of my favorite adaptations of Dr. Seuss's book. And after watching it again, it really makes my small heart grow 3 sizes during the holiday season. And to further explain why I love this movie, let's move on to Mustang Notes. Now, as I said before, The Grinch was Dr. Seuss's second favorite story he had ever written. And while he loved the Christmas of years past, he felt sad that it was more about selling than feeling. So, in a way, The Grinch book was his way of getting that feeling off his chest. And while it professionally made him feel better, personally it didn't, due to the death of his first wife Helen and his father Theodore. Before his death in 1991, Dr. Seuss refused offers to sell the film rights to his books. However, after his death, his widow Audrey Geisel agreed to several merchandising deals, including clothing lines, accessories, and CDs. In September 1998, Ron Howard signed on to direct and co-produce the movie with Brian Grazer, and the final screenplay was written by Jeffrey Price and Peter S. Seaman, who also wrote for Who Framed Roger Rabbit, while Alec Berg, David Mandel, and Jeff Schaefer did some uncredited rewrites. While studying the book, Ron Howard became interested in the character of Cindy Lou Who and pitched a film in which she would have a larger role, as well as a materialistic representation of the Who's and an expanded backstory for the Grinch. Principal photography took place from September 1999 to January 2000. Most of the Whoville set was built on the Universal Studios backlot behind the Bates Motel set from Psycho. After the movie was released, it has since gained a strong cult following. The film spent 4 weeks as the #1 film in the United States and grossed about $345.8 million worldwide, making it the 6th highest grossing film of 2000. At the time, it also became the 2nd highest grossing holiday film of all time, behind Home Alone in 1990, until both films were surpassed in 2018 by Illumination's version, and it won the Academy Award for Best Makeup. Plus, the movie was dedicated to Ron Howard's mother, Jean Frances Spiegel Howard, who sadly passed away on September 2nd, 2000. And during the beginning of the end credits, it said that she loved Christmas the most. Now, when I saw this movie in theaters back in December 2000, while I did enjoy it, I didn't really understand too much about it due to the fact that, 1, I have autism, and 2, I was 10 years old back then. But as I grew older, I began to appreciate this movie more and more, and there are many reasons why I still love it nowadays. Firstly, the village of Whoville feels very Seuss-like, and believe me, the very last time I ever saw this set was way back in the fall of 2014, and sadly, nowadays, I'm disappointed that the set was demolished and replaced by the set from Nope. As for the Grinch's Cave, which was filmed outside Boulder, Utah, well, I like that it's filled with crazy and whimsical contraptions. Also, I think the costumes in this movie are pretty great, even though most of the noses look a little strange, and I think the vehicles are pretty cool too. I also like most of the humor, which can range from mostly hilarious to sometimes a bit cringeworthy. However, some of my favorite comedic moments would have to be the Grinch's answering machine and his echo scene, which always makes me laugh every time I hear it. There's also a couple other parts where the Grinch tries to drown out some Christmas music using his blenders, a giant toy monkey with cymbals, and a jackhammer, and when he pulls a mountain yodeler aside with a vaudeville hook in order to steal his outfit. Plus, I really love the garbage dump slide, which happens a few times throughout the movie, and to me, that slide really looks like fun, and it makes me want to try it if it was ever real. There are also a couple other scenes in this movie that I like. Not just the ones that reference the original book, like the part where the Grinch thinks about Christmas Day, where every Who creates a huge racket while playing with their toys and having a feast with Who pudding and roast beast, and the part where he steals every Who's presents. But I also like that the film includes Seuss-like rhyming, and I like the parts that feature "You're a Mean One, Mr. Grinch," which I can't help but sing along to, and the beautiful Welcome Christmas song, which makes me all warm and happy inside, and it really brings a tear in my eye no matter what version I listen to. Speaking of music, I like that the movie features songs by different artists, like Busta Rhymes, the Bare Naked Ladies, Smash Mouth, NSYNC, and the Trans-Siberian Orchestra. However, in my personal opinion, the best song in the movie would have to be "Where Are You Christmas," performed by the beautiful Faith Hill, which became one of my top 10 all-time favorite Christmas songs. Plus, I think the score by the late James Horner is really sweet to listen to, and like a lot of the films he composed for, he knew how to pull at our heartstrings with this movie. However, there are a couple scenes that I think are the most over the top in my opinion. One example being the Jubilation celebration, where the Grinch is being force-fed Who pudding, fruitcake, and other holiday treats, but at least the conga and the sack race make up for it. Another example being the Grinch's rampage, where he burns down the town's Christmas tree with a makeshift flamethrower and hijacks a small car before it explodes after crashing into a fire hydrant. I mean, who would ever expect to see fire and explosions in a Dr. Seuss movie? Also to note, while watching the movie, I can sort of understand how Dr. Seuss was feeling due to all the Christmas commercialism. Heck, even nowadays, I feel the same way while working at Target during the holiday season. Plus, I also like that the movie gives a very nice moral about what Christmas is really about. Anyway, that's all I got for Mustang notes. So, let's move on to the cast. Let's start with the Grinch, played by my all-time favorite comedian, Jim Carrey, whom was in Blue Skies, Horton Hears a Who, Robert Zemeckis' A Christmas Carol from 2009, and before going into retirement, played Dr. Robotnik in the two Sonic the Hedgehog movies. To me, while he doesn't top the great Boris Karloff, I think Jim Carrey does an outstanding performance as the grumpy green creature who hates Christmas. Plus, I think he's both funny and eccentric, and I like that Jim Carrey ad-libs and breaks the fourth wall a couple times. During this version, it's revealed in his origin story that the Grinch started to hate Christmas after his school classmates mocked him for trying to shave his face, which I thought was very sad and sympathetic. Also, I like that the Grinch is a very crafty character, like when he goes around Whoville in disguise, causing mischief, like mixing up the mail at the post office and making prank phone calls, when he built a rocket-powered sleigh during the You're a Mean One, Mr. Grinch montage, where he uses a vacuum hose, a jar of moths, a saw, and other things to steal Christmas, and when he built a homemade angel for Martha when he was 8 years old. Speaking of which, 8-year-old Grinch was sadly Josh Ryan Evans' last film role before he passed away back in 2002 at the age of 20 due to complications related to a congenital heart condition. Plus, I thought the Grinch's most awesome moment is when he used his strength to save his sleigh and Cindy Lou Who from falling off the mountain. Next is his dog, Max, played by a dog named Kelly, and his vocal effects were provided by the legendary Frank Welker. To me, while we still do not know how he met the Grinch, I still think Max is a cute and sweet dog, and some of my favorite moments involving him is when he scares Cindy's older brothers, Stu and Drew, with a giant Grinch head, when he bites his boss to get him to save Cindy from the sorting machine, when he gives the Grinch the idea to dress up like Santa Claus due to the snow on his chin, and when he serves as the Grinch's reindeer. By the way, I thought it must have been really heavy when Max was forced to pull the sleigh up Mount Crumpet after it ran out of gas. Next we come to little Cindy Lou Who, played by then newcomer Taylor Momsen, who got to be in Spy Kids 2, The Island of Lost Dreams, and the 2007 Underdog movie. In my opinion, Cindy is a sweet and kind little 6-year-old Who, and not only is her role bigger compared to the original book, but I find it interesting that she's the only Who in Whoville who thinks that the Christmas spirit is lost. Plus, I like that Cindy looks past the Grinch's nasty behavior and that she thinks he's really sweet. Also, for her first film role, I think Taylor Momsen does a wonderful performance, and I think the late June Foray, who voiced Cindy Lou in the 1966 Chuck Jones special, would be very proud of her. Also to note, my favorite parts of the film involving Cindy is when she interviews several Whos about the Grinch's history, which, according to a deleted scene, was going to be the subject of her Huladerry report, and where she nominates and invites the Grinch to be holiday cheermeister so that she can have everybody together for Christmas. Next we have her parents, Lou and Betty Lou Who, played by Bill Irwin and Molly Shannon. Lou works as Whoville's postmaster, and Betty hopes to beat her neighbor, Martha, in the Christmas house lighting contest. To me, while they're not that important to the story, I still think they're decent characters. As for the other characters, we have Martha May Whovier, played by Christine Baranski, who was in Chicago, the Mamma Mia movies, and DreamWorks Trolls. Not only is Martha Betty Lou's rival, but she's also the Grinch's love interest. In my opinion, Martha's appearance and mannerisms bears a striking resemblance to Jessica Rabbit, and she seemed really cute as an 8-year-old. Plus, the reason why Martha has feelings for the Grinch is because green is one of her favorite Christmas colors. Sadly, Martha became heartbroken when the Grinch lost his temper and ran away after being laughed at. Plus, Martha cheers for the Grinch during the Whobilation sack race, and she was turned on when the Grinch burnt down the town Christmas tree. At the end of the movie, Martha turns down Mayor Mayhew's proposal and decides that she would rather stay with the Grinch instead. In other words, she finally admits that her heart belongs to him. Our next character is Mayor Augustus Mayhew, played by Jeffrey Tambor, whom was the great and powerful Wizard of Oz in the Muppets Wizard of Oz, King Neptune in the SpongeBob SquarePants movie, Susan's dad, Carl Murphy, in DreamWorks Monsters vs. Aliens, the big-nosed thug in Disney's Tangled, and Bailiwick's brother Nigel in Sophia the First. Now, I find this guy to be a real greedy and pompous douchebag. Heck, even as a kid he's a little jerk, like when he picks on the Grinch just because he thinks his quote-unquote beard isn't pleasant to look at. In fact, Mayor Augustus makes the late Angela Lansbury's mayor a lot more likable. Also, not only does Mayor Mayhole act like a bully, but he also gives the Grinch a razor for a Whobilation gift. He proposes to Martha in front of him, and he blames Cindy for the whole disaster on Christmas morning. However, I did like the part where the Grinch shaves his head, where his bed was hooked up to a cop car, and where Lou tells him off and reminds everybody that they still have the Christmas spirit, even if their presents are gone. Another couple characters to talk about are Clarnella and Rose Who, played by Mindy Sterling and Rachel Winfrey. These characters are two elderly siblings who raised the Grinch from infancy until he ran away when he was 8 years old. Now, to be perfectly honest, while they're not in too much of the movie, I like that they kindly tell Cindy about where Who babies come from, which almost reminds me of how storks bring babies and certain parts of the Grinch's childhood history. And finally, the narrator is voiced by Odin/Hrogthar himself, Anthony Hopkins. Other actors in the film include Jeremy Howard and TJ Thyme as Cindy's older brothers Stu and Drew, Jim Messigman as Officer Houlihan, Mary Stein as the school teacher, Ms. Ruhu, Ron Howard's brother Clint as the mayor's assistant, Hugh Briss, his father Rance as the elderly timekeeper, and his daughter Bryce as the surprise Who. And now, let's move on to my final words. Overall, The 2000 live-action adaptation of How the Grinch Stole Christmas is a beloved holiday classic. The sets and costumes are great. I love how it expands and references the original Dr. Seuss book. The comedy ranges from mostly hilarious to sometimes a little bit raunchy. The musical score by James Horner is really beautiful. Jim Carrey does a fantastic performance as the Grinch, and I thought he had nice character development and a very sympathetic backstory. Cindy Lou Who was very cute and sweet, and she made a lot more sense compared to most of the other Who's in Whoville. Plus, Taylor Momsen really does a great job for her first film role. Also, I think the movie gives a nice moral about the true meaning of Christmas, and I think if Dr. Seuss were still alive today, his heart would definitely grow 3 sizes. Lastly to mention, not only does this movie bring back childhood memories from my first choir show, but I also make it a tradition to watch this movie every year at Christmas time, along with the other holiday classics. And if I ever had children of my own, I would definitely share it with them, along with the other 2 adaptations. And believe me, this movie is a classic in every way. In fact, it's better than I remember. And so, it's for that very reason why I give this movie the highest rating of 100%. Well, that's all for now. Be sure to join me next time where we celebrate Christmas Eve at the House of Mouse. Mustang Power.